Osho had said that woman is the most beautiful phenomena of the world. She cannot be compared to anything else, and also that she is the masterpiece of God. Little did he realize that years later, this masterpiece will be subject to violence and discrimination. Efforts have been made world over for empowerment of women, so much so that November 25th every year is observed and marked as the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. Today, in Candid Conversation, we have with us Ms. Lakshmi Puri. She is the Assistant Secretary-General of the United Nations and also the Deputy Executive Director of UN Women. With her, we'll talk about the efforts that are aimed at empowerment of women and also the fruits which these efforts have bore. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us in Candid Conversation today. I'll start with this quote by Pablo Picasso. He says that there are only two kinds of women. One are those who are the goddesses and the others are doormats. In your career spanning so many years where you've worked for empowerment of women, I would want you to analyze and to put forth a picture of the women in the present scenario.
I want to first address the quote and look at what we have in India. Indeed, it is this kind of polarity of either yatra naryas tu pujyante ramante tatra devata, that wherever women roam, there the gods roam, or that defying women on one hand, and then also treating them as secondary citizens, as you, in your words, or Picasso's words, a doormat. So this is, in fact, this polarity is the problem of inequality, discrimination, and violence against women, which is the antithesis of what we want recognized, the equal humanity of women.
All right.
To men. That's what gender equality is all about, the equal humanity. It's not about goddess, it's not about doormat. It's about the equal humanity of women to men.
You're talking of equality, so that means that can only come when the woman herself is empowered. I would want you to tell us what for you is an empowered woman.
An empowered woman is one whose physical integrity is guaranteed. She has her own control over the body, about the choices she makes about her body. That's very fundamental, and that's why we talk about sexual and reproductive health and rights. It's about physical security and safety and freedom from fear. This is something, again, we need to guarantee, and she has to claim that as well. The other is of voice. She must have a voice in the family, voice in the workplace, voice in society and community, and voice in political spaces and political decision making, all levels of decision making. So voice, participation, leadership in decision making. And the third element is choice and opportunities, equal choice and opportunities to men and boys.
We also know that family is the first teacher for the child, and also the points which you've put forth for an empowered woman, be it the voice, be it the leadership qualities, choices, or for that matter, even the freedom. How far do the men and boys in the family play a role in ensuring that the women of their families are empowered enough?
Men and boys play a critical role in ensuring that gender equality and non-discrimination actually plays out in the family, in the community, in society, in the economy, in companies, in governments, in the parliament, in every space, in the media, in the entertainment industry. So every aspect of life and work and society is really about how men and boys stand up for gender equality and the equal opportunity for women and girls. It's how fathers, we have a fathers movement now. which we are supporting around the world. Fathers of girls and daughters are really key to also changing the way, you know, they are raised. They are given full. My own father was a feminist, and he always believed that every daughter of his should be someone in her own right. So fathers have to lead the way. Brothers, the Prime Minister wrote a letter on Rakhi Day to brothers, calling upon them to join. And we have the He for She movement, precisely because we know that women, of course, must claim their rights. Women must go out there, and we have a fantastic and one of the most respected women's movements and civil society in India. But at the same time, we need men and boys, and there is also a men and boys, men engage for gender justice movement in India, as well as in the rest of the world, that we, UN Women, is trying to foster and work with. And this He for She movement is about men standing up for gender equality and leading themselves a solidarity movement to change the mindset.
You're talking of the He for She movement, and also I would want you to elaborate more for us and tell us more about the other initiatives which have been put in by UN to ensure economic upliftment of women and also empowerment.
Well, you know, the key aspects of empowerment that we feel are really important for India, for women in the world, is economic empowerment. What do we mean by that? We mean equal access, ownership and control over land and other resources, productive assets, including finance, property rights, the whole rights, economic rights, you know, property rights, inheritance rights, and entrepreneurship. And then once you are in, and participation in the labor force, formal labor force. You know, in India we have only 26% of labor force participation by women. So we really need to change that landscape of economic rights and of access, ownership and control over resources and assets. And financial literacy, financial inclusion, financial empowerment is really critical. And of course, education and the value chain of education, training, skills development, and that's why Skills India is very important. But that should also be very much engendered. Every aspect of, you know, everything that Prime Minister Modi and others are trying to do, that needs to be engendered. So Skills India needs to be very much focused on how women economic empowerment is addressed. So this whole empowerment emphasis of people's empowerment should also have a women's economic empowerment emphasis. And this is something that we are ourselves working on. Social protection is a very important part of, you know, most women are in informal work, they are in vulnerable employment, they don't have social protection, and whatever schemes there are of social protection of the government have to be engendered, and they are to some extent being engendered.
Extensive efforts have been put in by the UN when we talk of their aim towards empowerment of women. Ma'am, we'll talk
if I may just also add to that, you know, we have UN Women has a flagship report this year, which the title of which is Transforming Economies, Realizing Rights. And it's about how the economy should work for women.
Ma'am, you were talking of the extensive efforts which have been put in by UN for ensuring empowerment of women. I would want you to give us an India-specific picture when we talk of the efforts aimed at empowering women. How far has the picture changed?
Well, first of all, UN Women is working with the whole UN family to support Government of India's efforts, and also work with civil society, with the private sector, to go all out to get India on the road of achieving gender equality and women's empowerment. And in that context, I think some significant areas, let's look at issues relating to maternal mortality. That was an MDG, MDG 5 goal, if you remember. And that, unfortunately, India is still off track. And we hope that, you know, more effort will be, and I know that more effort is being made in that area, and we need to really step it up to achieve the MDG 5 that you know, calls upon reducing maternal mortality. That's one area. The other areas where we really, if you look at economic empowerment, I already mentioned workforce participation, access to finance. I think gender responsive budgeting is critical. The government must dedicate, and we are working with the government. 57 ministries are already you know, practicing gender responsive budgeting. What does that mean? That means more resources, targeted resources, and sustained and consistent financing of programs and schemes dedicated for women and girls. That's absolutely necessary in all sectors. In terms of violence against women, this is one concern, or two concerns, that we must look at in India, and the government of India is very, and Prime Minister himself is very dedicated to this. This is the whole issue of girl aversion and boy preference related sex selection, which has given rise to this you know, demographic imbalance, but also it is created this whole cascading impact of gender inequality and the psychosis of gender inequality and discrimination and violence against women. If you're not even going to allow a girl to be born, and you question the right of a girl to be born, that's itself. So in that sense, we laud and we support and join the campaign, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao campaign, because that is again recognizing the equal humanity of a girl. One other area that I really want to highlight is political participation. And we have had chief ministers of states and presidents, but we are talking about participation in terms of parliamentary representation, which is still very low, 10%. Countries like Rwanda, building up after wars, have now got 66% representation of women in parliament. So we need at least to have that critical mass of 33%. So we very much support Prime Minister Modi's promise that he made, that he was going to push through the women's reservation bill. So we are supporting that. We hope it will be taken up and taken forward, because parliamentary representation makes all the difference, because women parliamentarians, when they get together, they caucus across party lines and they push forward legislation which is directed and which supports women's rights and women's empowerment. Another aspect where we are working as UN Women on the ground, by the way, we are working in some 16 states, and we are working at the local level to support women councillors. You know, there are 1.2 million local councillors, women councillors, because of the quota. So we need to have that quota system. Because of that, they have been enabled now to participate in local governance. But to build their capacity to be leaders. So that's what we are doing. We are working with the local government, we are working with the training institutions, and we are working with civil society to really empower them in the substantive sense so that they can exercise their leadership.
We're talking of the role the political leadership plays when we talk of empowering women. But then I would want you to elaborate more for us. How far is the civil society crucial for you? In that, I would want you to talk more about the civil society-based initiative of the UN Women, wherein we talk of the activism against gender-based violence against women, and which will end on the Human Rights Day in December.
Violence against women, or gender-based violence, is really, as WHO has declared and found on the ground, is a global epidemic. And India is one of the centers of that epidemic, apart from, you know, other countries around the world. And irrespective of whether you're rich or poor, women, 1 in 3 women around the world are subjected to some form of violence during their lifetime. So this epidemic has to be, you know, eliminated. This has to be eradicated. So we really need, as the government has done, as many governments around the world, and the UN itself is really driving a zero tolerance policy and Unite to End Violence Against Women campaign of the Secretary-General, which UN Women is spearheading, is really about mobilizing, on one hand, government action to adopt laws, to enforce and implement those laws, for the justice system to be reformed and to be able to really respond to and to provide justice and respond to when violence is perpetrated against women. Then there is this whole issue of how the law enforcement acts, you know, whether the police, the people in the law enforcement context, how do they act? To sensitize them, we have training programs. UN Women carries out training programs. We have the Safe Cities program, which is also about, you know, doing safety audits of cities for women and girls and making them safer for them, and then, you know, finding out what are the infrastructure points that are need attending to, you know, whether bus stops being properly equipped, whether you must have lighting, proper lighting. You know, there are different points which need to be addressed arising from the safety audits that we get. As you rightly said, is civil society. Civil society is playing a very important role. They have a number of, we have one of our partners is the Breakthrough, you know, which does Bell Bajao campaign, or there are some other campaigns that they do. So there are many civil society organized. Jagori is the other one that we are working with here in Delhi. So they mobilize people. Raising awareness is key.
Right. Tell us more about, you're talking of gender.
So there's 6, if I may just give you the Unite campaign. So 16 days of activism, beginning with, as you mentioned, the 25th November, is about mobilizing all of this to get governments to take stock, how have they fared, and then for you know, civil society and the people. So we have marked this with this year, I mean, we made her story, you know, history, but her story, by lighting up India Gate,
yes,
as in orange, and to say, to give the message, and you know, it has such a resonance in the Indian psyche and our context, because the color Rang De Basanti, you know, was about freedom, but this is about freedom from violence for women and girls. So it was very symbolic, but also very powerful symbol, And also the having India Gate being lit up, because that's the gateway to the whole country. So as I said in my messaging on that occasion, and we had the Speaker of Parliament join us to also give a very powerful message. As I said, through this, we are sending out a call to action to all the states, all the cities, all the villages of India, all the people of India, that they must wake up and really ensure that this flame, this jyoti,
running. Yes.
should be always lit, and that it should not, that there should be no violence against women, no honor killing, no child marriage, no rape, no assault, no abuse, and also no sexual harassment at the workplace, no domestic violence, no violence in the public spaces.
Which
So
will
that-
indeed lead to gender equality.
Absolutely, because you see, violence against women is the symptom, is the worst form of discrimination and inequality.
Ma'am, we're talking of gender equality. I would want you to tell us more about the Sustainable Development Goals. A goal especially has been directed towards gender inequality. Tell us more about that.
You know, this year, 2015, has been historic for gender equality and women's empowerment related international commitments and norms and standard setting. We have had 20 years of the Beijing Platform for Action, which is a gold standard for gender equality related commitments by member states. We have also had, and they have recommitted to full, effective and accelerated implementation of the Beijing Platform. We've also had the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, Transforming Our World, adopted in September, and Prime Minister Modi was there on behalf of Government of India to commit to that. And as you rightly said, within that Agenda 2030, not only is there a standalone dedicated goal on gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. This is very important to note, on achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. Earlier, MDG 3 was about promoting gender equality. This is about achieving. So this is a tremendous leap of faith, saying that it is achievable, it is mission possible, that it is not only about trying, we have to get there. So this can-do spirit is very, very important, and the commitment. And so that is one. So there are 6 targets of this goal which relate to ending all forms of discrimination. For the first time, also, there is a commitment to end all forms of violence and harmful practices such as child marriage and trafficking. So, for the first time, violence against women is a sustainable development issue. Then you have valuing unpaid care work, as well as the whole issue of redistribution and provisioning by the state. Then this is again revolutionary, you know, the recognition of unpaid care work that women perform and how that needs to change in order to achieve. Then you have universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. Again, another fundamental targets that has been set. And control over your own body and your reproductive function, right? And then you have the economic empowerment target, and this is very important. Equal participation and leadership in decision making in the economic, political and public life. So earlier it used to be just parliaments, but now that equal participation in parliament and parity in parliament, but now we are talking about parity in all areas. So this is tremendous. And there is also a commitment to significantly increase investment in women and girls' empowerment, to strengthen institutions of gender equality. It's really very, very comprehensive.
So promoting gender equality, it has changed to now achieving gender equality.
Absolutely.
And this rise in expectations is also because of the progress which has been made. So
Progress, but also the realization about the essentialism of gender equality for achieving everything else. You cannot reduce poverty or eradicate poverty unless you empower women and girls.
So,
or achieve even environmental sustainability or social development. None of your targets or none of your 17 goals. And that's why in 11 other goals, SDGs, you have gender sensitive targets. And we have developed now indicators, a global framework of indicators on gender related indicators or targets. So this is something, again, the government of India has to localize now and adapt. It is not business as usual or finance as usual or governance as usual or social development as usual. Everyone has to now, adopt the SDGs. And India played a very important role in the adoption, in the building up of this Agenda 2030, and will have to, we hope, will lead in really taking this agenda forward and showing the world that it is leading the way in achieving what we also have another very big global campaign called Planet 50-50 by 2030. Because you see, this Agenda 2030 means you are in the next generation, within this generation, you have to achieve gender equality, Planet 50-50.
So execution is the key word here, and that sums up
implementation, execution, commitment, resources.
Yes, that sums up the efforts which have been put in by the UN. And as we say, that execution is the key word, implementation is the key word. It will be a long journey ahead. But then when we talk of the efforts and the results which have been seen, a well beginning is almost the half battle won. And on that note, we'll end this conversation here. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us on Candid Conversation.
Thank you very much.
And with that, we'll end this edition of Candid Conversation. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.